How do you use fear? Or does fear use you? Do you use it for greater growth and creativity, or does it stop you and your team in their tracks? Stay tuned for a creative approach to handling scary situations. Hi, Shannon Waller here, and welcome to Team Success. Today, I'm going to share something that I was coaching in our Strategic Coach Team Leader Workshop, and it was a really fun, interesting conversation, and it's a little different than normal, and I'm going to talk about the value of fear. Bet you weren't expecting that today. So one of the things that we talk about in the workshop, I actually put the word fear on the smartboard. I said, what does fear mean to you? And it was really interesting. You know, things that are scary, anxiety, an unexpected and unpleasant change that happened. It was interesting. Actually, just change came up as a thing. I was like, even if it was your idea, and she's like, yep, even if it was my idea, it can be a little, fearful to have that. So all of the normal negative things about fear came up. And then someone said, actually, also learning and opportunity and to do something different. And all of these other positive benefits of fear came to light as well. And I thought, exactly. I think this is an important conversation for entrepreneurs and for entrepreneurial team members, because we are often doing things we have not done before. And just by definition, slightly terrifying. We haven't made this foray into the marketplace. We haven't tried out this new product before. We haven't had these conversations. Maybe we're testing out new backstage systems. We're not quite sure how it's going to work. Fear is kind of how we roll. In our 10X exercise, we talk about one of the things that's interesting about an entrepreneurial nervous system is we get kind of cued at a higher level than most humans, in my estimation, my experience, to being able to tolerate a level of fear. Now, I'm not talking about life-threatening guns, daggers. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about we willingly take risks. And it's our willingness to go through periods of fear, uncertainty, and discomfort to get to what we call a higher level of normal that actually keeps us alive, keeps us alert, keeps us learning, keeps us growing, keeps us from being complacent, right? All of those things, we're willing to engage in the world at I'm going to say riskier level than most people are. But you didn't think of it that way. And I think it's important for team members to know that they have taken themselves out of the quote unquote safety of larger, much more hierarchical corporate bureaucratic structures. Although to my mind, they have their own dangers, and I am not willing to go swim in those waters. I can tell you, I would not survive. But they've been willing to jump out of that into an organization, yours, that is, taking risks, growing, learning, testing, experimenting, expanding all of the things into new territory. We're pioneers. We're doing things that haven't been done before. And that's exciting. And again, that can be front stage or that can be backstage. So we came up, truth be told, it was Kathy Davis that captured this. So one of the quotes in the workshop is, your largest fear carries your greatest growth. And then what's worth being afraid of? I have a different relationship to fear, at least of wild animals, than most people have. I'm not intrinsically scared of them. I'm super curious. I'm also super respectful, and I'm not stupid. I'm not scared of black bears. Grew up with them around my cottage area. Now, am I cautious about them? Sure. I'm not getting between two baby cubs I saw in their mama. Not doing that. But I don't know. It's not that I don't think I'm going to come to harm, but I'm not going to do anything that's going to be threatening or, trigger their fear response. And if you go into a situation not afraid, it's kind of interesting how other people don't feel like they need to, hurt you. I'm talking about this as other people. They're really not. They're animals. But it's interesting when we come into situations afraid, we can trigger other people's, either their fear, and then they can either run away or attack. When we come into situations where we've kind of we're at peace with this level of fear or anxiety, and we're like, okay, this is normal. We normalize feeling uncomfortable, which is kind of special. Again, there are some things that are worth being afraid of. Anything life-threatening, anything that's going to threaten the health or well-being of your clients, of your team, yourself, your family, anything that's going to threaten your livelihood, sure, those things are worth being afraid of. There's a lot of other things, though, that are not, like making mistakes. It's okay, that's another one, chalk it up to learning. That's kind of okay. So what are the benefits of fear? Well, and by the way, there's a great book called The Gift of Fear. Just fabulous examples of how fear just woke people up and they took action to save their lives. There's some great stories in the book. There's huge benefits. It's enhanced focus and alertness. There's a whole physiological thing. More blood and oxygen goes to your eyes if you're in a life-threatening situation. So you can see better. It goes away from digestion, by the way. It goes to your limbs so that you can run. So you have this increased focus and alertness that you did not have a few seconds ago. Increased resilience. We had a great conversation about this yesterday in the coaching that I got to do. And it's just how situations that people have survived that were scary, and again, mostly not life-threatening, it means they're strong. It experienced the resistance. It's like muscles, they don't grow unless you actually tear the muscle fibers by lifting heavier weights. And that's kind of fascinating. It's the regrowth of the muscle tissue that makes you stronger. It doesn't happen any other way. You do not learn how to be stronger in life unless you have some pushback. Dan talks about you're born, and then it's all a negotiation with life. Saw my physio the other day, and he's like, it's you and gravity. That's how people end up being so uniquely configured. How does your body handle gravity? So it's that resilience against resistance. I think that's really key. And there's strategic and positive tension. You're like, you want something, but you're not quite sure how you're going to get it. I've talked a lot about the 4 C's. You make a commitment to something you do not yet know how to do, and then you have to go through the courage phase. This is the fear part. You have to be willing to handle the fear. People who are unwilling or unable to handle fear don't ever experience courage, and they stay where they are. They don't make these larger commitments. Once you've got the courage, then you develop the capabilities, because no one likes staying in that phase for too long. I want short courage, not long courage. And then out of the capabilities, that gives you that whole new level of confidence. Dan's been actually talking about that confidence to be even more ambitious, which is a really fun context around that. This is for our new book, Always More Ambitious, that he's writing at age 81. How cool is that? So there's this positive strategic tension, something that you want, and then motivation to act and change. And this is really interesting. I think about there's some situations where like, oh my gosh, if I keep going in this direction, bad things will happen. I need to do something different. And I'm scared of those bad things, just to be clear. Okay. So here's a definition of entrepreneurial fear. It's the transformative energy that is the catalyst for the game changer thinking essential for 10x growth, innovation, adaptability, and resilience, especially during times of change or uncertainty. We are in scary times. That's why I was coaching the other day. But how can you use this as fuel as opposed to something that was just going to stop you in your tracks? How can you use it as motivation to grow, to innovate, to adapt, to be resilient, to grow 10 times? That's really what we're talking about. So entrepreneurial fear is a little bit of a different beast. So one of the ways to put this into action for you, and you can do this with yourself, do this with your team, is to really take a look at what experiences in your life have led to your greatest transformations. What situations have caused you, to just become the best you that you are now? What created that? If you look back, and this is a little exercise that's available when you're in the coach program, is you take a look at what were some of those experiences in the last 6 months, the last 3 years, in terms of your lifetime, what were some of the most transformative experiences? And when you analyze that, you realize you're kind of probably at a bit of a precipice. You actually had to decide to move forward when it was scary. I remember my first webinar. I remember coaching my first workshop. I walked into the empty room, and this was a few days before the session was all booked and scheduled, and people had signed up and they paid and all the rest of it. Materials were ready. And I walked to the front of this empty room just to kind of get a feel for it. And I opened my mouth and nothing came out. I was like, oh dear, I better get this figured out fast. As Dan said, sold the tickets, have to create the play. And so I had to figure out how I was going to introduce the day. And when I did start on that very first workshop, it worked. I did have something to say. Something did come out of my mouth. That's 30 years this year. So clearly that was a success. But that was transformative. It scared the crap out of me to say that I wanted to do this. I've told the story in other podcasts. It's a school project that I came back and told Bab. She was like, great, let's do it. I'm like, now what do I do? I learned how to coach. I learned how to design. Yes, I had Dan as a model, but I'm not the same person as Dan. So that was one of my early transformative experiences. There's other personal ones in terms of relationships and who I wanted to be in a relationship with and who I did not, and the quality of human that I wanted to, have in my life. And that's true for my romantic partner, my husband, Bruce. It's also true for my friends. And it's definitely true of my teammates. I'm picky about that. And often it came from a situation where it didn't work, or I was really worried that something was going to go wrong. Even my ability to make money, there were some very, very, very lean years at the beginning. So I was scared that I was never going to make any more money and that I was going to go hungry. They were lean times, let me tell you. But that drove me to become a lot more capable. I don't like to lose. Nobody does. I don't like to not win. I'm not super competitive, but I don't like failing. I don't like not being successful. That's probably the best way I could put it. And so I will work my tail off to get to that level of success where it makes sense for me. But I was scared in those situations. So when you take a look at what were those experiences and then you ask yourself, oh, was fear involved? Pretty much guarantee it was. And then what was the learning? What was the transformation that happened? And then the payoff. What was the outcome? And so if you were to do this reflection exercise, and again, it's great to take different time frames, the last 6 months, the last 3 years, and over the course of your lifetime, when were you a little bit scared? It could be a little, it could be a lot. Completely up to you. I have done some cool things where I wasn't scared. Writing my first book, Dan said, write a book. So I'm like, okay. So I wrote a book. I didn't know enough to be scared at that point. Second one was much harder, by the way, multiplication by subtraction. So it's interesting. Not all growth is fear-based, but maybe 90%, at least in the examples that I've read and the ones I've gone through myself. It's kind of amazing. We can use fear really productively. And what I want you to do with this conversation is kind of appreciate that you have an ability to handle fear that probably other people don't, or at least certain types of fear. You've normalized it. You've utilized it for good. You've been able to transform that fear into positive, collaborative, creative action to get a better result. That is useful. So when we use fear as fuel and we don't look at it as bad, I do think there's so much experience with anxiety and stress. And I think a lot of that actually comes because it's very diffused. People are anxious because they don't have a saber-toothed tiger chasing them. That's pretty clear. And once it went its way and you went your way and you're breathing hard and you realize you survived, you can regulate your nervous system back to normal. We don't have those things happening. We don't have someone chasing us, but we have generalized anxiety, and that our nervous system does not know what to do with. So specific fears are way better than non-specific or generalized fears. And so I would really work with yourself and with your team to get specific about what they're worried about and then address them. And then think about how can we come up with a creative solution for that? How can we use this alertness, this paying attention as a motivating factor, a motivating force to make things better? Just don't get stuck. Dan and Babs remind me that in the book Wind in the Willows, there's this term called tharn. Tharn is like frozen. So it's fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And so this is the freeze. It's like, you don't want to be frozen in the face of fear. That is not helpful for anybody. So working with yourself, working with your team to go, okay, what are you specifically worried about? And often it's this little tiny little piece of it. And you might think it's the big thing. And when they first come and talk to you and you get it down, it's like, oh, well, I'm worried that if I say this to this person, they'll be mad. Or that if I respond this way, it's not going to be well received. By the way, if this is the issue, Chris Voss, Black Swan Group, Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference, Derek Gaunt's book, Ego, Authority, Failure, which is Black Swan Training Applied to Business. Phenomenal. I'm doing an author interview with Derek. I'm so excited about that. So look for that in the next couple of months. It's one of the best books on leadership I have ever read. And I've read a few. So it just gives you the tools, the language to have those type of circumstances. But the other thing is sometimes you're testing something in the market and you don't know whether or not it's going to work. Good. Figure out your worst case scenario. If you can live with that, you're fine. It's not just leaving the fear in the back of our brain, our lovely amygdala that keeps us alive, the fight, freeze, or fawn, but it's moving it up to our prefrontal cortex, our slower but thinking brain, and processing it and making it useful and thinking it through. Using strategic coach tools are fabulous. Impact filter, strategy circle, experience transformer, certainty, uncertainty. My goodness, right? All of these tools are brilliant if you're a coach client to help you think it through. If you're not a coach client, you can get Impact Filter from our site, or you can join the program. But it's amazing. I think what we do in so many of our conversations is we take that new, big, extraordinary, scary thing and we make it more normal. And that is one of the geniuses of our thinking tools is we help do that. So don't get stuck in generalized anxiety. That is not fun for you. It's not fun for your nervous system. It's probably not fun for anyone around you, but make it specific. You can get creative. You can get responsive about that. Fear is normal. So I want you to appreciate how you actually deal with fear already. You've had some great successes and some great transformations as a result of that. Are there new scary things out there? Economy is kind of interesting right now. We're not in control of some of those decisions that are being made, but we still have agency over what we can do. We have agency over what we will do. We have agency over our own personal relationships, our value creation in the marketplace. We know who our clients are. We know our backstage systems. We know our teams. So there's so much that we know that we can bring to bear to solve these challenges if we look at them that way. If you look at them as just something to be overwhelmed by, you'll have no access to any of these resources or creativity. So again, appreciate your ability to handle it already, and then be really specific about how it's benefited you in the past, and then get again specific about how you can take today's challenge, opportunity, and really process it so that you can figure out how you can take creative action. We are never at a loss. It's our response to situations that matter, not the situations themselves. So being fearful, first of all, we have apparently 5 times as many neurons tuned to fear or scary situations as we do to good things. So our brains are looking for it all the time, and it will find it. But it's what you do with it that matters. So use fear. Make it useful for you. Put it to work. Don't let it live rent-free in your brain. So I want to have this conversation because I think it's important for entrepreneurial teams to know that they're good at this, and they've actually chosen not boring. They left bigger companies to come and work in this one because it's more fun. It's more challenging. They learn, they grow, they build resilience, they become more capable, and they love this process. So if this is you, pat yourself on the back and then encourage your team to really okay, guys, we're good at this. We've handled this and this and this and this and this in the past. We can handle the next one. I think that is the key point. You've got this. Fear is not a big deal. It's actually fuel for creativity and growth. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this has prompted some really great thinking with you. Any questions or comments, please let me know at questions@strategiccoach.com. And as always, here's to your team success.